someone writes, well said, Rabbi Smith, definitely each one of us needs to stand on the right side in accordance with the words of the Torah. May I summarize that individual tests are for Gula Pratis, which means the individual redemption. The remaining question, I think, is in our time is how to achieve Gula Klolis. How do we achieve the general redemption of every single human being? So the answer is that each one of us has to, and it's well said, the comment here is well said, that yes, each individual test is bringing each one of us to an individual redemption. And it's precisely through passing the individual tests that we bring about the general redemption. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, when in expressing his frustration that people were not getting the message about the imminence of the redemption and that we have to be willing to bring about the redemption, talked about how not only do we see that there is a general exile, but was even worse is the individual exile that each person is in. And there's a connection, because when we are satisfied and complacent with our individual exile, and we're not willing to go into our own individual redemption, then we are prolonging the general exile. The general redemption is a product of the 8 billion individual redemptions. It's going to come from within each person. There's going to be a transformation, a consequential transform as a consequence of that individual redemption. Is going to be a consequential shift in the entire world. So, for example, we're just discussing when we were learning yesterday that it says in the prophecies of the coming of Mashiach and the redemption, it says that the swords are going to be beat into plowshares. So if we have to understand, what does that really mean? People understand in a very simple way that there's going to be end of war and there's going to be peace. But what does that really mean? So we can understand that by knowing that the entire mission of Amalek to promote the cult of scarcity and to convince people that the shortage in the world is what is the cause of warfare. And specifically, as Thomas Malthus was a writer who lived at the end of the 1700s and beginning of the 1800s, and he wrote on behalf of the cult of scarcity the concept of, in the 1798, he wrote a book called An Essay on the Principle of Population, where he said that the world was overpopulated in 1798, God forbid, and that the way to resolve that was to create warfare, to decimate the human population, to create famines, and to create, obviously, a mindset that people would not have children, every way possible to prevent and to reverse the growth of human population. So when we understand that, and he as a proponent of the Enlightenment and a proponent of Amalek and the Marxism and communism is really the ground troops, the violent imposition of the cult of scarcity, then we can start to see that all the wars that are being fought and have been fought have been for the purpose of creating enough perception of a compelling conflict to get people to be willing to decimate each other and to eliminate huge portions of the world's population. And each side to feel that they're fighting for something valiant, because otherwise people realized that they were being drawn into and agitated into just decimating their own populations and the other populations. They would not be willing to do that. But the real intention is a charade of characters and justifications and messaging, like World War I was instigated as an opportunity to destroy the European order and to stabilize the entire European and Western Asian continent, and really all of Asia, to bring about a advancement for Amalek, to bring about the stabilization and the decimation of the human population and the destruction of the old order, in order to bring about communist revolution in every one of those countries. So the war was instigated. The war was something that is part of the Malthusian promotion of the decimation and the elimination of Rahman al-Islam. They got to protect us of the human population. So when we understand that that's what warfare is, it's a tool of the decimation of humanity, including all the wars that we're being prompted to and told we have to choose sides in to this very day. World War II, the ongoing wars, all these no-win wars, which just seem to continue and actually do continue, just to the decimation of the human population. Now we can understand what the prophet is saying. The prophet is saying that they will beat the swords into plowshares. It's saying that all the energy, all the focus of building and coming out with greater technical advances and manipulating people's minds and to bring decimation of the human population, God forbid, is going to be turned around to building plowshares, which is to increase the human population, because plowshares are for the increase in food supply. Plowshares are used to create food for people, to make more food. So the prophet is talking about a complete change in mindset, people changing their allegiance from the cult of scarcity, which says create war, famine, decimation, destruction, and destroy people's only sense of their own godliness, so that they will, not follow the first commandment to be fruitful and multiply, and instead intentionally set out and be convinced to have no or few kids or not even get married in the first place. All these are parts of the Malthusian objective, which is Amalek's objective. People will switch from that allegiance to the cult of scarcity to have allegiance to the God of abundance. That there's plenty, there's more than plenty, and the world population will go from 8 billion to 80 billion, as it's just a first step to recapture the gain of the loss under the Malthusian Amalek's Enlightenment decimation of at least 500 million human beings over the last 100 years. And that's not including all those that were not born because of voluntary and forcible sterilizations brought about by the United States government's aid policies in other parts of the world. We're talking about a Holocaust, as has been written about, the population control Holocaust. Many, many times over, the 6 million Jews that were eliminated as part of the population reduction plan. So what we are seeing now, we could see what the prophet is talking about. So to go back to the Gula Pratis and the Gula Klalis, what is your redemption? Is to say, wow, I have been fooled into believing in all these false wars. I have been fooled into believing that the expenditure of time, energy, and resources on building up massive military budgets for the purpose of creating the impression that something worthwhile is being fought for, to then lose war after war. People are all riled up to spend money on the military as a necessary, untouchable part of the budget, yet the military loses every single war. So what exactly is going on over here? Well, because the purpose is not to win the wars, the purpose is to devote the resources into the decimation of humanity. May God Almighty protect us. And you have all these well-meaning men and women who believe that they're serving their country, but on all sides. Right? In World War I, everyone thought they were on the side of the right side, and didn't realize they were being played into just killing people. So too today. So all that's going to shift. So how do you shift it? Say, okay, I've been fooled. They got a good one on me. And I bought into all these lies and supported all these wars. Then I stayed silent while they were structuring famines and killing tens and millions of people in the Ukraine in the 1930s, and now in the United States they pay people not to farm their land, and in Africa the tremendous famines that are man-made, and I see that's going on. Oh, so I've been fooled. I'm going to speak out about that. And I am now going to see how we've been fooled to have fewer and fewer children, or not have children at all, God forbid, or to abort children, or to practice family planning and birth control to prevent children. And okay, I'm going to disconnect from that cult of scarcity. That's what the false prophets are teaching us, to follow after foreign gods. So the warfare, the famine, and the family planning, sterilization, abortions, how is it that I was silent while my tax dollars are being used to have hundreds of millions of Indian women to be sterilized, that they can only have one child or two children at most? How is it that I'm buying products? And I don't buy products from China to the extent possible. How is it that any person is buying products from the People's Republic of China, the communist dictatorship that forces the abortions of billions of human beings? Okay. This is all the Malthusian ideology, the Amalek's ideology at work. And I'm the one who's silent, and I'm the one I'm silent, and I'm participating in it. Look, in the United States and China, they have a one-child policy or a two-child policy as part of the Malthusian implementation. In America, and that's compulsory, in America, there's a voluntary one or two-child policy. What's the birth rate in America? What is it? 1.6 children, 2.6 children? People are voluntarily having the exact number of children that they have under communist rule in China. So the exact Malthusian ideology is being championed in the United States of America and being voluntarily adopted by the people. So now that's the sword. That's the sword of decimation against humanity. We're no longer living in a time where war is truly, you know, two men that two clans that really wanted to expand their territory. And because in those days, by the way, people were, you know, competing over land and so forth, and often the goal was actually not to decimate the population. It was to try to expand his territory and to conquer larger groups of people and be a king over more people. That's a attribute of a human being, has a midah of netzach. The person wants to be a king, and he wants to expand his territory, and wants to rule over more people. We're no longer, we have not been living in those times for probably hundreds of years. Certainly not for the last since the French Revolution. Napoleon was all about the decimation of humanity. It was all the implementation of the Malthusian ideology. The Enlightenment's all the ideology of destroying the knowledge of God. That was what that battle was about. So you could say somewhere back from those days, from the 1700s already, the warfare was all about just the decimation of masses of people to reduce the population. So now you go back and you realize your whole understanding of history has been off. First World War, they were all fought over these different fundamental beliefs, and that the Germans believed this way and the Austrians believed this way, and this is what prompted this war. That's the historians are writing based on the excuses that were used to convince the people at the time why they should go and decimate their own people and other people. But everyone is being fooled. Certainly, the French Revolution and the wars in Napoleon, and then World War I, World War II, the wars going on today are all part of the Malthusian objective to decimate the human population. So you uncouple yourself from that. That's the gula pratis. Okay, what can I do to have more children? Okay, so now a person is going to say maybe their opportunity to have children has passed, or maybe God Almighty didn't bless them with children, or maybe they are older now and they can't have children, whatever it is. So then, okay, how am I going to reach out to the next person, the neighbor, and say, have more children. Do you realize how you're being fooled? You have 2 children? What do you, 2 children a woman could have, if she gets, first marriage is being delayed today, and with the intention of decimating the human population. And then they're promoting to women that they should stop having kids at 40 because they claim there's a higher risk of birth defects. So that scares women into going into birth control at 40. All made up, all false prophecies. They lie to the people. They don't tell them that this 40 is just an arbitrary number. The supposed increases in very minute numbers over time, but they just create bands of 40 and over to create the impression that lump all those statistics together so that women are terrified at 40, whereas the actual a possible measurable increase is only many years later. But since they can play with statistics and lump it into 40 plus, then people are terrified to stop having kids at 40. So now a woman's getting married at 26, 27, 28. So she's reduces her childbearing years to 10 years old. So now you have to go to your daughters, to your granddaughters, to your neighbors and say, you're already 18 years old. Who put this idea in your head that you have to go and become get a college degree and a master's degree and a PhD and get a medical degree and all these things before you can have children? Someone put that in your mind. Malthus put that in your mind so that you should eliminate 15 years of child raising, childbearing. Look what's happening to you. So now go encourage them. Like I did this interview with Rabbi Forgash about just one life, that they're funding women in Israel not to have abortions, pay for bringing the child to term and pay for the family's needs and so forth, in the tens of thousands of people, because the Malthusian objective is telling people financial difficulties equals eliminating a child. And that, by the way, they're only helping the people that are pregnant already and are being pressured into abortion. What about the millions of people that are refusing to get pregnant because they feel that they don't have enough money? They now created taxes. Over 50% of our income goes to taxes, that it's impossible for a family to feed itself unless 2 people are working. So now the family's under pressure not to have kids. It's a brilliant strategy. It's all voluntary. So what could you do? What's your gula pratis? Your gula pratis is to say, okay, I've been fooled. We do tshuva. We say, oh my gosh, I can't believe how I've been taken advantage of, how we're all being fooled. Now go and help somebody else have kids. Encourage a couple to get married. They're thinking about it. They're dating. Get married already. I went out with my wife 4 times. I got married, engaged on the 4th date in 1 week. It was all 1 week. That's how much time do you need? So God Almighty gives us an intuitive sense of who's the right person. So this is the blessings that we have, and instead we get complicated in the thoughts of all these messaging from Amalek through the media that, oh, we have to spend time, get to know the person, all this kind of stuff, delay, get the degree, get the job, build a house, all these kind of things. And it's true that the Rambam says that the proper way a man should do things, he should first get a profession, a job or trade, not a profession necessarily, but I'm saying some sort of income generating opportunity. Then he should build a house, and then he should marry a wife, and he brings his wife into the house. That's very true. But now we're living in a situation where the time that it takes you to get the degree to be able to, you believe that you have to get the degree to be able to make the income, is now delaying that buying a house until a person's 30 years old. So he just eliminated 12 years of bringing children into the world. So all that serves the cult of scarcity. So the Geula Klolis, the general redemption, is when each person is, now you break out of that, you have your own individual redemption, and you go to the person and say, do you see what's happening to you? Your joyful life of bringing children into the world is being, you are voluntarily eliminating it, and limiting your possibilities of your own redemption by buying all these lies of the cult of scarcity of Amalek. And then your tax dollars are being used to fund the forcible imposition of the Malthusian agenda on other populations that have not been so infected. Why do they have to do this in India and China and stuff like that? Because the people there don't go to hear all these philosophies and statistics and so forth, and these ideologies. They don't learn about Malthus, so they didn't voluntarily take it upon themselves. So they have to force it upon them in India. These people, fortunately, are not university educated. They're not college brainwashed, so they have a lot of kids. So the only way to deal with them, they're not interested in what Malthus has to say about the world population. These people are living with much greater population densities, and they're having many more kids. And yet, so that they're not interested in Malthus, but so they have to come along. And while the women have to give childbirth, they have to sterilize them by telling them lying to them about what they're doing, or telling them they have to do it, and conditioning government aid on it, and the foreign aid and so forth. So, my friends, this is how the general redemption is going to happen when each one of us make a personal redemption. And it's urgent. Every moment, millions of people are being eliminated. If there's 70 million abortions in the world a year, and those are the ones that had the opportunity to become pregnant, and think about the hundreds of millions of pregnancies that are intentional, and billions of pregnancies perhaps that are intentionally not occurring. It's look at the phrasing. They talk about unintended pregnancies. Why do they want to promote abortion? Because they say there's unintended pregnancy, so therefore there should be access to birth control, and there should be access to abortion. But what is an unintended pregnancy? An unintended pregnancy is a person's mind has been played with to believe that the pregnancy is not wanted, so therefore when they became pregnant, oh, that wasn't what they were intending. One second, the whole purpose of a man and woman coming together is to bring children into the world. That's the first commandment and blessing, is be fruitful and multiply. So what do you mean it was unintended? That's not a divine message. That's a message of a Malthus, of Amalek, of the Enlightenment, and Malthus is the representative of the articulator of that ideology in the idea of population control. That's what got into a person's head. So now he thinks that he doesn't want the child. So now the child is unintended. Oh, if only he had better means of preventing the child, then he wouldn't have had the child or had the pregnancy. Now they want to eliminate the pregnancy because it wasn't intended. So you see, it's all a lie. But the truth is that God Almighty wants each one of us to have as many children as possible. And to realize that it's meant to be in a loving way, it's meant to be in a joyful way, and the children should be raised in a beautiful, supportive, healthy environment. And when we have that personal redemption, we're able to provide that, because we ourselves are in a lighthearted, joyful place. So that's one example. We could go through hundreds of examples of how the Enlightenment has twisted our thinking. But when we have a redemption from that, and that's why we cannot fall into the trap of, as many people try to push us into thinking, that the defiance of the tyranny of the last few years is the real issue, and that's the real solution. No, the real issue, this is a thousands of year battle against humanity. And it's a battle for humanity that Abraham, our father, has been leading, to bring every human being to recognize that he's created lovingly and intentionally, and recreated lovingly and intentionally at every instant by God Almighty, and has unlimited availability of what he needs to bring more upright human beings created in God Almighty's divine image into the world. That's what Abraham, our father, took upon himself, to bring that message to every human being. And we are continuing that message, and we have to increase the measure with which we promote that message, and we bring that message of hope to every single human being. It says, Maisa Alva Simon Banim, that the actions of the fathers are a sign for the sons. So some people like to understand that the way our forefathers acted, we're supposed to try to emulate that. But who are we? How can we possibly emulate that? It's only like a simon, meaning to say that it's kind of like we're a pale reflection of their example. So actually, it means exactly the opposite. The actions of the fathers are the simon, the simon labanim, means to say that the actions, the way our forefathers conducted ourselves, is a simon. If you you want to make a painting, you take a pencil and you trace out the lines of what the picture is supposed to look like. That's the simon. That's the sign. That's the tracing of what it's supposed to look like. And then you come along in the next stage, and now you fill in the painting with all the beauty and all the incredible detail and all the incredible abundance of the actual painting itself. So our forefathers are the ones that trace the lines of showing us what it's supposed to look like. And it's our job now to bring the full color and bring the full beauty to the picture. And that's why the Rebbe said in his first Hasidic discourse when he became Rebbe, we have to ask ourselves the question, as the sages say, Masai, Yigia Maisai, the Maisai Avram Yitzchak Yaakov. When will my actions reach the level of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? We have to challenge ourselves. We are challenged to rise to their levels of their actions. And even if we see that we are not on their level of completely becoming a chariot to God Almighty, but nevertheless, our practical actions have to be like their actions. And that the main action is the act of redemption, the act of redeeming ourselves from all the lies and constraints and the internal obstacles, and persevering past the internal obstacles, persevering past the external obstacles, and persevering past the external obstacles is all this perseverance. Netzach and Haid of these two midas is really about getting the message out. Because if you think about it, the way we're built, corresponding to the way the divine expression is of the spheros, the way that we're built is that it goes from an idea, divine inspiration is the highest level, where God Almighty communicates to us and gives us insight. And it goes through articulating the details and then connecting with the idea and then bringing it out through loving kindness and discipline and compassion and mercy. Then there's the internal endurance to be able to get past the internal obstacles, and then the ability to hide. You get past the external obstacles, and then there's Yesod, creating relationship, and then creating a foundation, and then there's Malthus, which is nobility, which is kingship, which is speech, which is communicating to others. So what is really this level of overcoming the internal obstacles and the external obstacles is not just I want to overcome internal obstacles and external obstacles. I want to break the chains of slavery. I don't like being a slave. No one could tell me what to do. That's not what it's about. What it's about is being able to transmit the divine message to another human being. And the real constraints are when I feel constrained inside by my internal personal thinking, that's the insecure thinking. So I don't know, why should I say this? What are people going to think about me? All these kind of things, like we talked about earlier. I have to persevere, endure past that. And then I have to endure past the external obstacles. People are saying, why are you saying this? Well, they're looking the other way. They're not interested. All those external obstacles, or they're doing, trying to contradict the truth and trying to attack and so forth. All those things is not for the purpose of my getting that endurance, is not for the purpose I should feel better about myself. The purpose is that I can get to the point of being able to speak clearly to other people what the divine inspiration was in the first place. That's what spreads the redemption, the communication, the possibility of redemption, spreading the hope of redemption. So everyone else's well-being depends on my showing up for being who I really am. living according to my spiritual compass and my spiritual backbone, having the spiritual backbone to carry through on that spiritual compass. Because I have a message that God Almighty's inspiring into me, and I have a message I need to bring it out in Dibur into communicating with other people. And each one of us has that. So that's what each one of us has to do. You have to look and see what thinking are you entertaining that's keeping you from carrying out the divine message in your own life and spreading the divine message to other people. That's the gift that we have. And so the lesson of the Rebbe's father is we can do that under any circumstances. And we're willing to do it under any circumstances. We're not in any way affected or frightened by the forces, the power, how powerful they appear, how many people seem to be belonging to the wrong side, what kind of opposition we find among the people who should be doing the right thing. All that's irrelevant. All that matters is we set we do what's required of us. We bring forward that divine from within us, and we communicate that message to other people. And that brings our personal redemption, because our personal redemption is through that expression. When you're able to break out and share with someone else the message of hope, that is your personal redemption, and that prompts his personal redemption, the one who's listening to you, and then he passes it on to the next person, and the cumulative effect, but not in over time, it can happen instantaneously. Because when you share with people that this hope, this springing forth of redemption is something that can happen and happens in an instant, that everyone could be prompted to that in an instant. And that's why the Rebbe's father, Rebbe Levi Yitzchak, was talking to the Jews and to the non-Jews, because the redemption has to be every human being. He was teaching them that God Almighty loves them and cares for them, and that He has a mission. God Almighty has a mission for every single human being, because the redemption is required to be an experience of every single human being. So I want to encourage every single person who's here watching now, and everyone who's going to watch this later, and to really spread this message. We have 8 billion people we need to reach. 8 billion people we need to reach to bring them to 80 billion. And it's simply a matter of you moving past those calculations and internal obstacles that keep you quiet compared to your ability to communicate to other people, to what you're meant to be doing. And so develop that spiritual compass. You know that if you're here already, you have the spiritual compass, but make sure it's coming out in every aspect of your life. And then bring the spiritual backbone to the forefront to be able to communicate it to everybody else. And that's what's going to bring Mashiach. It should happen right now, speedily in our times. Not just in our times as tomorrow, but right now in this time. Okay. God bless you all. Thank you for being here. Keep spreading the message of hope.